Good evening. Hi, welcome to Wellfleet Harbor Actors Theater. I'm Christopher Ostrom, I'm WHAT's producing artistic director, and on behalf of all of us here at WHAT, thank you for joining us tonight for this reading presented by Writers for Democratic Action. We are so proud to provide a forum and a space to gather as a community to have these important conversations about what's happening in our world around us. And perhaps today there's no greater conversation than how do we gather together and work together to preserve the delicate democracy that we've built up over the past 250 years in this country. And it's also especially important, I think, today to both observe, commemorate, and document the events of January 6th. So thank you for being here tonight. Before we start, we ask that you take a moment to locate the emergency exit nearest to your seat. In the event of an emergency, go to that exit and away from the building, or as directed by a member of our staff. We also ask, this is a time, let's turn off our phones. Let's take a moment to disconnect from technology, to be present in this space, to be present in this story, and to be present in this moment. I'd also like to extend a special welcome to those of you who are joining us tonight on YouTube. Thanks for tuning in and being part of this. It is my privilege to introduce somebody who perhaps needs no introduction, and that is the one and only Jeff Zinn, who has organized this reading, directed this reading, and performs in this reading.
Thank you, Chris. Thank you, everyone, for coming out tonight. I'm very gratified to see such a great turnout for this. You know, as I was reading this play and getting ready to bring it to you, and going through this event of January 6th, it just occurred to me that it had a kind of a ritualistic kind of effect. I mean, we've seen it before. Most of us, I think, witnessed it live, and to revisit it has a kind of a ritualistic flavor to it. You know, we're sort of looking at it and going through it again. Much like the ancient Greeks might have gone to the theater to see the gods fighting and the humans, and they would go through all of that, and at the end of it they would have a catharsis, hopefully, according to Aristotle, and they would leave the theater purged. Only we don't get to do that. When we watch this live and when we watch the hearings, it was a kind of theater, and it had a kind of narrative arc to it that felt like it was going somewhere, and then it didn't. And that's very unsettling. And you know, that's a good thing. It's a good thing to witness a piece of theater, even if it's living theater, and be unsettled, because then we don't just retreat into our safe bubbles. It hopefully encourages us to take that unsettled feeling and act and do more with it. And so whatever that might stimulate in you tonight, I ask that you nourish that feeling, and all of us need to think about ways that we can act, we can make a difference. So thanks again for coming. I want to thank Chris Ostrom, the Wellfleet Harbor Actors Theater, the staff here for allowing us to be in this space tonight. I want to thank Kevin Rice from Payamet, who is sponsoring this event and helping to make it possible. I want to thank James Carroll, who's one of the co-authors of the piece and really the kind of ringleader of this nationwide event, because these readings are taking place all over the country tonight. Yeah, yes indeed. And Jim will join me on stage after the reading, the very short reading. It's only about a half an hour long. And we'll have a conversation with all of you. So stick around after the reading. I want to thank Chris Blood, who is our intrepid video and audio engineer, who's up in the gods there, and making all this happen and helping to stream it out into the world, where literally people are watching and joining with us. We won't put a number on it. It's not that big, but we're very grateful for those of you who are tuning in. And I'm mostly grateful to my wonderful cast, who I'm going to bring out right now and introduce to you. Carryl Lynn, yay, Carryl. Nat Taylor, Sallie Tighe, and Dennis Cunningham. Here we go. The Democracy Theater Project of Writers for Democratic Action presents January 6th, A Day Forever, the second impeachment trial of Donald J. Trump, President of the United States, excerpted from the Congressional Record for Writers for Democratic Action by James Carroll and Rachel DeWoskin. The trial takes place in the Senate chamber with 100 senators sitting at individual desks that face a raised rostrum from which the managers present the case. For purposes of this reading, those present in the audience are senators.
Thank you very much, Mr. President. Members of the Senate, good morning, good day. Some people think this trial is a contest of lawyers, or even worse, a competition between political parties. It is neither. It is a moment of truth for America. Trump incited the January 6th attack, and when his mob overran and occupied the Senate and attacked the House and assaulted law enforcement, he watched it on TV like a reality show. He reveled in it, and he did nothing to help us as Commander-in-Chief. Instead, he served as the inciter-in-chief, sending tweets that only further riled the rampaging mob. He made statements lauding and sympathizing with the insurrectionists.
At 4:17 p.m., over 3 hours after the beginning of the siege, for the very first time, he spoke out loud, not on Twitter. He spoke out loud to the American people.
I know your pain. I know you're hurt. We had an election that was stolen from us. It was a landslide election, and everyone knows it, especially the other side. We love you. You are very special.
And this is what he tweeted at 6:01 p.m.
These are the things and events that happen when a sacred landslide election and victory is so unceremoniously and viciously stripped away from the great patriots who have been badly and unfairly treated for so long. Go home with love and peace. Remember this day forever.
Let's take just a minute and really look at his words on January 6th as he spoke at the Save America rally. You will hear 3 phrases: the election was stolen, stop the steal, and fight like hell. Let's start with the first phrase.
All of us here today do not want to see our election victory stolen. There has never been anything like this. It is a pure theft in American history. Everybody knows it. Make no mistake, this election was stolen from you and from the country.
Now, of course, each of you had heard those words before. So had the crowd. The president had spent months telling his supporters that the election had been stolen And he used this speech to incite them further, to inflame them, to stop the certification of the election results.
We will never give up. We will never concede. It doesn't happen. You don't concede when there's theft involved. And to use a favorite term that all of you people really came up with, we will stop the steal. We must stop the steal.
Finally, the president used the speech as a call to arms. It was not rhetorical. There were vast reports across all major media outlets that thousands of people would be armed, and they would be violent, that thousands in the crowd would be targeting the Capitol specifically, and this is what our commander-in-chief said to the crowd in the face of those warnings right before they came here.
We will not let them silence your voices. We are not going to let it happen. Not going to let it happen.
Fight for Trump.
Fight for Trump.
Fight for Trump.
Thank you. Thank you. And you have to get your people to fight because you'll never take back our country with weakness. You have to show strength, and you have to be strong. And we fight. And we fight like hell. And if you don't fight like hell, you're not going to have a country anymore.
The harm was real. The damage was real. 5 people lost their lives on that terrible, tragic day. A woman was shot dead 50 feet away from where we later certified the election results.
We broke into the Capitol.
We got inside.
We did our part
We were looking for Nancy.
to shoot her in the freaking brain.
Finally, in his desperation, he turned on his own vice president.
We would have killed Mike Pence.
He pressured Mike Pence to violate his constitutional oath and to refuse to certify the vote. President Trump had decided that Vice President Pence, who presided over the certification, could somehow stop it. As Pence later confirmed, the vice president does not have that power in the Constitution.
President Trump never tried to explain why he thought the vice president should block the certification of the election results. He just began relentlessly attacking his own vice president. Publicly, President Trump attacked Pence on social media and at rallies, getting his supporters to believe that Mike Pence could stop the certification on January 6th. Here is what Trump said in Georgia on January 4.
And I hope Mike Pence comes through for us, I have to tell you. I hope that our great vice president comes through for us. He's a great guy. Of course, if he doesn't come through, I won't like him quite as much.
On the morning of the rally on January 6th, President Trump tweeted,
All Mike Pence has to do is send them back to the states, and we win. Do it, Mike. This is a time for extreme courage.
privately, in person, before Pence headed over to oversee the joint sessions on January 6th, President Trump again threatened Pence, according to 2 persons briefed on the conversation.
You can either go down in history as a patriot, or you can go down in history as a pussy.
You will see and hear the consequences of President Trump's repeated attacks on Vice President, the chants of traitor and the chants of hang Mike Pence.
Hang
Mike Pence.
Hang Mike Pence.
Donald Trump, over many months, cultivated violence, praised it, and then when he saw the violence his supporters were capable of, he channeled it into his big, wild, historic event. These supporters of his didn't just rely on entering the Capitol with guns haphazardly. They had maps of this building. They talked through which tunnels to use and how to get to the Senate chamber. Some posted specific floor plan layouts of the Capitol, alongside hopes of overwhelming law enforcement to, as they put it, find the tunnels, arrest the worst traitors.
They wanted to find the tunnels, arrest the worst traitors. And a new affidavit filed by the FBI described preparations by the right-wing group, the Proud Boys, to storm the Capitol, including using earpieces and walkie-talkies to direct movements through the building. This happened. That is the level of planning in advance that occurred. They had earpieces. In the photo, Proud Boys member Dominique Pezzola had an earpiece in his right ear, consistent with the affidavit.
These tweets attacking the election as fraudulent, attacking his vice president, and urging his supporters to fight continued throughout the morning. Here is another example. At 8:17 a.m., he tweeted,
All Mike Pence has to do is send it back to the states, and we win.
"And we win." That is what he said, even though by then he had clearly lost.
All of us here today do not want to see our election victory stolen by emboldened radical left Democrats, which is what they're doing, and stolen by the fake news media.
This attack, like the tweets he sent that morning, had a purpose: convincing his supporters that the future of our country, of our democracy, hinged on whether Vice President Pence would overturn the election, something he worried Pence could not and would not do. He called out Vice President Pence 9 times that day, and each time he got more forceful. Here is what he said at 12:15.
And we're going to have to fight much harder. And Mike Pence is going to have to come through for us. And if he doesn't, well, that will be a sad day for our country, because you are sworn to uphold the Constitution. Now it's up to Congress to confront this egregious assault on our democracy. And after this, we are going to walk down, and I'll be there with you. We are going to walk down. We are going to walk down anyone you want, but I think right here, we're going to walk down to the Capitol, and we're going to cheer on our brave senators and congressmen and women, and we are probably not going to be cheering so much for some of them, because you never take back our country with weakness. You have to show strength, and you have to be strong.
I would like to offer a very brief timeline of what was happening as the president spoke on the 6th of January. A little after noon, President Trump began his speech with a fiery refusal to concede. He commanded the crowd to fight and march down Pennsylvania Avenue.
12:20, rally-goers begin marching.
12:30, the rally crowd amasses at the Capitol.
12:53, the barricades of the northwest side of the Capitol are breached. Capitol police are forced back to the steps of the Capitol.
1:10, Trump ends his speech with a final call to fight and a final order to march to the Capitol. 1:45, his followers surge past Capitol Police shouting, "This is a revolution!
This is a revolution!"
This is a revolution!
1 hour after Trump ended his speech, the insurrectionists overwhelmed Capitol security and make it inside the halls of Congress. Draped in Trump's flag and using our flag, the American flag, to batter and to bludgeon.
2:30, there is terrifying banging on the House chamber doors. For the first time in more than 200 years, the seat of our government is ransacked on our watch.
But at 12:55 p.m., January 6th, Vice President Pence formally refused the president's demand. He wrote, and I quote, "It is my considered judgment that my oath to support and defend the Constitution constrains me from claiming unilateral authority to determine which electoral votes should be counted and which should not."
Pence ended with the words, "I will do my duty." Even though the count resulted in the defeat of his party and of his own candidacy, Vice President Pence had the courage to stand up against the president, tell the American public the truth, and uphold the Constitution. That is patriotism. That patriotism is also what put the vice president in so much danger on January 6th by the mob sent by our president.
To the president and the mob he incited, that duty to our Constitution was an all-out betrayal, and the vice president was the direct target of that rage. At 12:53 p.m., senators, members of Congress, and Vice President Pence were in their respective chambers. Outside, rioters, including some linked to the Proud Boys, broke through the outer barricade surrounding the lawn of the Capitol.
Whoa,
Whoa, whoa,
whoa! Hey,
hey there.
wait,
Break it
break it
down.
down! Break it down!
12 minutes later, Vice President Pence began presiding over the joint sessions of Congress to certify the results of the presidential election. You can see Vice President Pence gaveling in the joint session here.
Madam President, members of Congress, pursuant to the Constitution and the laws of the United States, the Senate and the House of Representatives are meeting in joint session to verify the certificates and count the votes of the electors of the several states for President and Vice President of the United States.
While Vice President Pence presided over the joint session, Trump supporters began their assault on our Capitol. Radio communications from the Metropolitan Police Department highlight how, during and following President Trump's speech, Trump supporters descended on the Capitol and became increasingly violent.
Multiple capital injuries, multiple capital injuries.
12 to 50, we're coming around from the south side.
Be advised the speech has ended. Be advised you've got a group of about 50 up on the hill, the west front, just north of the stairs. They are approaching the wall now.
They're starting to dismantle the reviewing stand. They're throwing metal poles at us.
Cruiser 50, give us DSO up here now. DSO, multiple law enforcement injuries. DSO, get up here.
All right, we're 30 seconds out.
We need some enforcements up here now. They're starting to pull the gates down. They're throwing metal poles at us.
Cruiser 50, DSO, get up here.
Okay, we're here. 12 to 50, we're here.
We just had an explosion go on up here. I don't know if they're fireworks or what, but they're starting to throw explosives, fireworks material.
Pull them this way.
Pull this way, pull forward.
No.
At 1:10 and 1:23 p.m. respectively, Capitol Police sent out the first evacuation alerts of the day, telling people to evacuate the Madison Building and the Cannon Building respectively. Shortly after, at 1:45 p.m., Trump supporters surged past Capitol Police, protecting the Capitol's west steps, the side that is facing the White House.
Cruiser 50, we're going to give riot warnings as soon as the LRAD is here. We're going to give riot warnings. We're going to try to get compliance, but this is now effectively a riot.
This is our fucking house.
This is a revolution. Let's go. Push. Go.
Fuck you.
Fuck you.
While the mob that Donald Trump sent to stop the certification came closer and closer to breaching the Capitol, just one floor below where we are now, Vice President Pence continued to preside over the session in the Senate chambers above. At about 2:12 p.m., the Secret Service quickly and suddenly evacuated Vice President Pence from the Senate floor. Here is the immediate reaction to that evacuation.
It seemed like they just ushered Mike Pence out really quickly.
Yes, they did. That's exactly what just happened there.
They ushered Mike Pence out. They moved him fast. They were, I saw the motion too.
Let us in. Let's go. Break the window,
windows, bro.
Come on.
The rioters first break the window with a wooden beam, and a lone police officer inside responds and begins to spray the first man who enters but is quickly overwhelmed. I want you to pay attention to the first group of assailants as they break into the building. The second man through the window is wearing full tactical body armor and is carrying a baseball bat. Others are carrying riot shields.
Among this group are members of the Proud Boys, some of whom, like Dominique Pezzola, who was recently indicted for federal conspiracy charges. Now, while this was going on, Officer Eugene Goodman responded to the initial breach. You all may have seen the footage of Officer Goodman previously, but there is more to his heroic story. In this security footage, you can see Officer Goodman running to respond to the initial break. Officer Goodman passes Senator Mitt Romney and directs him to turn around in order to get to safety.
On the first floor, just beneath them, the mob had already started to search the Senate chamber. Officer Goodman made his way down to the first floor where he encountered the same insurrectionists we just watched breach the Capitol. In this video, we can see the rioters surge toward Officer Goodman, who backs up the stairs.
USA, USA, that's my muffin, I paid for that.
You work for us. Where's the meeting at? Hey, where do they count the fucking votes?
Hey, 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 do it, do it.
Where are they counting the votes? Where are they counting the votes? Right there. Hey, these people, we have no weapons.
We have no fucking weapons.
Oh, no, motherfucker.
Although they were shouting that they didn't have any weapons, we know from earlier video that that is not true. The second assailant through the breach was the one carrying the metal baseball bat. We know there were other weapons there that day. Did you hear the other shouts?
We're here for you.
He's one person, we're thousands. Where do they count the votes?
As the rioters reached the top of the stairs, they were within 100 feet of where the vice president was sheltering with his family. And they were just feet away from one of the doors to this chamber, where many of you remained at that time. I also want to show you a different angle from the security footage of Officer Goodman's axe. This video is on the second floor of the Senate wing of the Capitol.
And watch how Officer Goodman provoked the rioters and purposefully drew them away from the door to the Senate chamber and toward the other officers waiting down the hall. The rioters seen carrying a baseball bat in this video is the same as the one we saw moments ago, breaching the windows of the first floor. While all of this was going on, Vice President Pence was still in the room near the Senate chamber. It was not until 2:26 that he was evacuated to a secure location.
This next security video shows that evacuation. His movements are depicted by the orange dot in our model. The red and blue dots represent the location where the mob and Officer Goodman were, and where Officer Goodman led the mob away from the chamber just moments ago. You can see Vice President Pence and his family quickly moved down the stairs. The Vice President turns around briefly as he is headed down. As Mike Pence was being evacuated, rioters started to spread throughout the Capitol.
Those inside helped other rioters break in through doors in several locations around this entire building. And the mob was looking for Vice President Pence because of his patriotism, because the Vice President had refused to do what the President demanded and overturn the election results.
During the assault on the Capitol, extremists reportedly coordinated online and discussed how they could hunt down the Vice President. Journalists in the Capitol reported that they heard rioters say they were looking for Pence in order to execute him. Trump supporters had erected a gallows on the lawn in the front of the Capitol building.
Repeat that. Trump supporters had erected a gallows on the lawn in the front of the Capitol building.
Hang Mike Pence.
Hang Mike Pence.
Bring out Pence. Bring him out.
Bring out Pence.
Pence lied to us. He is a total treacherous pig, and his name will be mud forever.
Now the real battle begins.
The American people are very pissed.
So good luck with that.
Peace out.
On January 6th, armed and organized insurrectionists trained their sights on Speaker Pelosi. They sought out the Speaker on the floor and in her office, publicly declared their intent to harm or kill her, ransacked her office, and terrorized her staff. The mob continued to look for Nancy Pelosi throughout the time they occupied the Capitol, including invading her offices.
Where are you, Nancy? We're looking for you.
Where are you,
Oh,
Nancy?
Nancy.
Nancy.
Oh, where are you?
Where
2:50 p.m., several rioters, including Richard Big O Barnett, entered Speaker Pelosi's office. The world is all now too familiar with the images from these slides. If you look closely, however, at the now infamous pictures of Barnett with his feet on the desk, you might see something that you didn't notice previously. Here is a better look. As this photo highlights, he is carrying a stun gun tucked into his waistband.
So I figure, well, I'm in her office. I got blood in her office. I put a quarter on the desk, even though she ain't fucking worth it.
And I left a note on her desk that says, Nancy, Big O was here, you bitch.
Can I speak to Pelosi?
Yeah,
we're coming for
bitch.
you, bitch.
At the same time, just one floor below, the mob finally pushed through a line of Capitol Police officers and overtook the area.
We have a person with tear gas in the rotunda. Please stand by. There are masks under your seats. Please grab a mask, place it in your lap, and be prepared to don your mask in the event the room is breached.
Be prepared to get down under your chairs. We have folks entering the rotunda and coming down this way. So we will update you as soon as we can, but just be prepared. Stay calm.
He has a gun. He has a gun. What the fuck? Where the fuck are they?
Take your pins off. Take the pins off.
Pins off. Pins off.
Out of fear that they would be seen or taken by the mob, my colleagues were telling each other to take off their congressional pins. That buzzing sound that you hear in the background of these videos was the sound of the gas masks. In this security video, you can see how the Capitol Police created a line and blocked the hallway with their bodies to prevent rioters at the end of the hall from reaching you and your staff.
The president was delighted. As he watched the violence unfold on television, President Trump was reportedly, quote, borderline enthusiastic because that meant that the certification was being derailed. Senator Ben Sasse relayed a conversation with senior White House officials that President Trump was, quote, walking around the White House confused about why other people on his team weren't as excited as he was.
The evidence is clear. Shortly after 2 p.m., as the siege was fully underway, then President Trump made a call. This is the first call that we are aware he made to anyone inside the Capitol during the attack. He didn't call Vice President to ask how he could help defend the Capitol. He didn't call the next two in line into succession of the presidency to check on their safety or well-being.
At this point, insurgents were inside the Senate and the House, and the Senate had been evacuated for everyone's safety. As you saw, Vice President Mike Pence and his family even had to be evacuated for their safety. Now, you will recall, Donald Trump had made Vice President Pence a target. He attacked the Vice President at the rallies, in speeches, and on Twitter. And during President Trump's speech that morning of the attack, he ramped it up again. After privately pressuring Mike Pence in front of thousands in the crowd, he called Mike Pence out 11 times, including saying,
Mike Pence, I hope you're going to stand up for the good of our Constitution and for the good of your country. And if you're not, I'm going to be disappointed in you, I'll tell you right now.
and this was the crowd's response to Donald Trump's days of relentless attacks on his own vice president.
Hang Mike Pence.
Hang Mike Pence.
And what did President Trump do in response? Did he stop? Did he tell his base, no, don't attack my vice president? Even when President Trump knew what his words were causing, he didn't do any of those things to stop the crowd. In fact, he did the opposite. He fueled the fire. At 2:24 p.m., he tweeted,
Mike Pence didn't have the courage to do what should have been done to protect our country and our Constitution. USA demands the truth.
USA demands the truth. Mike Pence, anarchist.
Mike Pence, anarchist. Oh, Mike Pence, we're coming for you too.
Fucking traitor.
Some of these insurgents were heard saying, quote, that they hope to find Vice President Mike Pence and execute him by hanging him from the Capitol Hill tree as a traitor. And then they erected the gallows with a noose.
Repeat that. And then they erected a gallows with a noose.
This is what Donald Trump incited. Please take a close look at this picture. It harkens back to our nation's worst history of lynching.
And then they erected a gallows with a noose. This is what Donald Trump incited. Please take a close look at that picture. It harkens back to our nation's worst history of lynching. They could have killed Mike Pence. A president's words have the power to move people to action, and these were the results. One brave officer was killed. Others took their lives after the attack. More than 140 police officers were injured, including cracked ribs, smashed spinal discs. One officer lost an eye. Another was stabbed with a metal fence stake. They were completely and violently overwhelmed by a mob and needed help. And our commander-in-chief, President Trump, refused to send it.
Not until 4:17 p.m., over 3.5 hours after the violence started, did our president send a message finally asking the insurgents to go home.
I know your pain. I know you're hurt. We had an election that was stolen from us. It was a landslide election, and everyone knows it, especially the other side. But you have to go home now. We have to have peace. We have to have law and order. We have to respect our great people in law and order. We don't want anybody hurt. It's a very tough period of time. There never has been a time like this where such a thing happened, where they could take it away from all of us, from me, from you, from our country. This was a fraudulent election, but we can't play into the hands of those people. We have to have peace. So go home. We love you. You're very special. We've seen what happens. You see the way others are treated that are so bad and so evil. I know how you feel. But go home and go home in peace.
And at 6:01 p.m., he tweeted,
These are the things and events that happen when a sacred landslide election victory is so unceremoniously and viciously stripped away from great patriots who have been badly and unfairly treated for so long. Remember this day forever.
We will, of course, each of us remember that day forever, but not in the way that President Trump intended.
At 8:06 p.m., the Senate gavelled into session, and the counting of the electoral votes was continued. About an hour later, the House followed suit. And close to 4 a.m., after spending a significant part of the day evacuated or on the floor or hiding, this great body fulfilled the will of the people and certified the Electoral College vote.
Here ends the Congressional Record's transcription of the second impeachment trial of Donald Trump. But on January the 20th, 2025, his first day back in office,
President Trump granted a, quote, full, complete, and unconditional pardon to more than 1,400 individuals convicted of offenses related to the events at or near the U.S. Capitol on January 6, 2021.
events in which 140 police officers were injured, some grievously.
And President Trump commuted the sentences of 14 persons convicted of the most serious offenses, including Proud Boys leader Dominic Pizzola, who used a police shield to break a window and become the first rioter to breach the U.S. Capitol, the first of thousands. They're all free.
While in the immediate aftermath of being assaulted in the riot, 3 police officers died.
Officer Brian G. Sicknick,
Officer Jeffrey Smith.
Officer Howard S. Liebengood,
Within months, 2 more of the besieged officers, Gunter Hashida and Kyle DeFreytag, died by suicide.
So yes, January 6th is a day forever.
January 6th is a day forever.
We are writers for democratic action.
and we approve this gathering.
Not only to refuse the coup,
but to defeat it.
The end. Thank you. Thank you so much. We're just going to reset for a minute. If anybody has to leave, the doors have been locked. You're not allowed. What's that? Yeah, you can do that. I'm going to bring Jim Carroll up onto the stage to lead our discussion. Come on down, Jim. There he is. Cool. Have a seat here, Jim. Thank you. Jim always gets the first word and the last. So thank you for writing this piece, Jim.
Well, let me say the first word is thank you. Thank you, dear Jeff. Oh, my goodness. Jeff Zinn is such a treasure, obviously for our community, but for the world of theater and the world of political hope. Thank you, Jeff, for arranging this, pulling off this very poignant and powerful and compelling and outrageous rendition of what we're all trying to respond to now. And my second thank you is to this fantastic cast. Where are you now?
Right here. Right here.
Would you please stand up again? Would you please stand up again? That you were able to bring such depth of feeling, at the same time, unbelievably compelling restraint to the words that were put in front of you, enabled us all to hear them as if for the first time. The most familiar event of our recent history, you made it seem like it was only happening now. So thank you so much for your skill as actors, but also for the depth of your human commitment that informed your work. And my other thank you, of course, my friends, is to all of you. Here we are. Many of us have been in this space together, convened by Jeff Zinn and Chris, whose stalwart support at the Wellfleet Harbor Actors Theater for this project is by now a tradition. Kevin Rice, his support for this project, by now a tradition, and so many of you coming back again, the fourth time, by now a tradition. And it's a tradition on which the hopes of our democratic future hang. So thank each and every one of you for coming here tonight. My own sense is that the most important thing we can do right now is have an expression of our solidarity, put into words the meaning of this experience. We're all quite aware, we couldn't be more aware of the way in which the Donald Trump movement wants desperately to rewrite the history that was just put in front of us, not just by Jeff, not just by these skilled actors, but mostly by the Congressional Record, a work of accurate, fact-based recapitulation that will live on in history, unable to be denied. The horror of that day. And for me, of course, the horror is centered on the image of that gallows. You all remember the picture. Let me just have this as the word I would say about what we just all remembered. A gallows in the sacred precinct of the United States Capitol, my friends. A gallows that might well have been used. The lynching of the Vice President of the United States. Have we Americans actually yet taken in that image? Given what the gallows has been in this country? How deeply into the abyss can we go? It's an odd question for us because day after day, week after week, month after month, and now year after year, we have again and again touched what we thought was the bottom of the abyss. And yet it never quite is. Today, Venezuela. Tomorrow, Greenland. The day after tomorrow, Denmark. The day after that, Europe itself. Where does this end? If there's a point to remembering the events of January 6th, 5 years ago today, it is to reckon with, as directly as we can, that a forecast of the bottom of that pit, the forecast of the bottom of that abyss was put right in front of us. There it was. And we left it behind. I don't know about you, but as I listened to the record of the Congressional reckoning with this event just now, the main experience I was having was, my goodness, I haven't really faced the full horror of this yet. Jeff quite movingly and wisely evoked the work of Aristotle and his great theory about the drama of tragedy, catharsis, the point of putting in front of human beings the worst things they're capable of. Remember, Jeff's point of reference is Aristotle's Poetics, which is his theatrical criticism of the play Oedipus Rex. And what he insists upon is that a tragedy consists in the reckoning with the worst things human beings are capable of. And in Oedipus Rex, those worst things are symbolized by incest with the mother and the murder of the father. But what Aristotle tells us is, by looking directly at the worst things we can do, we come to a recognition of the truth in a new way. Oedipus sees that he is the killer of the king, and that he is the one guilty of incest. And in that seeing, which causes him to blind himself, he faces the truth, and the truth overwhelms the evil. And the plague is lifted from Thebes, which is why Aristotle insists against the common understanding that the tragic form is the most hopeful form of human knowing, which is why we can go into the theater, behold the worst things human beings are capable of, and come out, catharsis, filled with hope and resolve, which is, of course, the point of our being here tonight. We are not leaving here even more angry, even more discouraged, even more horrified. No, we're leaving here with more resolve, more recognition of what we're up against, and more determination to bring it to a humane and hopeful, and in our case, democratic conclusion. Isn't that why we bothered to come out on this cold night? I went on too long, and it's not my fault. Jeff brought up Aristotle. It punches my buttons, I admit. But now it's wonderful.
Well there. Yes.
Now it's a wonderful time to hand it back to Jeff and to you, folks.
So I'll just thank you, Jim, for that. That's wonderful. I just wanted to say a couple of things. I mean, the events of the past year seem to have hurtled forward like a freight train. I mean, it just keeps coming, and it gets worse and worse and worse. But I think that the positive spin on all of that is that I feel like they are know that they're running out of time, that they're racing to get done all of the evil deeds that are in their 2025 and more bag of tricks before the doors slam shut, because they will slam shut. That's why the pace. That's why they're going so bloody fast and in this kind of reckless way. It's like a speeding car being driven by a mad drunk driver, which indeed is what we have. So that's one observation. The other thing is that I was thinking of maybe this will spark you again, Jim, but George Orwell in 1984 and the memory hole. And the memory holding of this event, of January 6th, that has been undertaken. I mean, Orwell had a little box where you slipped a piece of paper in, you know, how quaint, how simple and easy that was. What we have is this incredible barrage of misinformation and disinformation and a kind of pummeling of the truth and the memory. It's like, no, it didn't happen that way. No, it didn't happen. And that's, I believe, one of the good reasons why we're here tonight and why we need to kind of reenact this, this event, ritualistically almost, to remind ourselves of the truth and to go out and to keep reminding, you know, no, or rather, yes, it did actually happen, and it was that bad, and let's not forget it, and don't you forget it. Anyway, now it's your turn. Who does anyone want to bring up Marx or Hegel or? What? Yes, hand up. Good. We have a microphone coming to you. Yes, you do. Well, and let me just say this. The microphone helps our folks who are streaming in to hear what you're saying. We can hear you in the room, but if you'll speak into the mic.
Thank you. Thanks, everybody that read the congressional facts. As you might remember, your father, Howard Zinn, was my professor, and I have a new job now. I don't have it. I'm teaching again. I'm teaching French, and in high school. And today, I heard some of the kids talking about January 6th.
Ooh.
And, oh, no, it all happened because I told them that my professor was Howard Zinn and that I went to Boston University. And then the kids they couldn't believe it. And then I said, how do you know Howard Zinn? And the kids said, the people's history of the United States.
Wow.
So,
That's
but I almost
hopeful.
wimped out coming here, and I'm here with my friend Bill, and we get to talk about current events. And I just had so much hope that those young people in the public high school, their history.
What grade? What grade?
High school, they're like 11th and 12th graders, and
Cool.
so their teacher.
Excellent.
I know. So that gave me so much hope, you know, because
For sure.
just by all of us showing up,
Mm-hmm.
and you know, I'm in this setting, and everybody is very, very nice. I'm in a new school setting. I just wanted to share that.
Thank you. Thanks very much. Who else? Who's next? Hands. Right there.
I also want to thank everybody, and I especially want to thank you for writing this piece. And as a retired high school teacher, I couldn't help thinking about how important this piece will be for high schools to perform for each other. Because, like, you know, we've all said, it's incredible that this really happened, and how it is being, you know, forgotten or erased or trampled or denied. It feels like a really important piece, and I couldn't help thinking about high school students being able to see it and perform it in the future. Thank you.
Sorry?
What's the name of the YouTube site this will be on?
Oh, that's a good question. I mean, did you get an email from me telling you about this event? because I'll send out a link to it. Or actually, if you find me on Facebook, do you do Facebook? No. Okay. Congratulations. But it's on my Facebook page. Okay. And IMPEACHMENT. Yeah. Yeah. Good.
About the record, I was struck today, the news this afternoon, that President Trump spoke at a Republican House retreat today. You may have seen this at what many of us insist on continuing to call the Kennedy Center, which is just north of the Gulf of Mexico. But he went on a bit about the events of 5 years ago today, as one would expect. And he said it was a glorious day of patriotism, except if there was trouble, it was caused by the Democrats and especially by Speaker Pelosi. And I just want to lift up that Speaker Pelosi's spokesperson responded by saying, no, actually, Speaker Pelosi did not plan her own assassination. Other comments? Folks, it's especially important for us to put into the words that come to us what a moment like this means. So I encourage you to speak up. What do you think?
And while you're getting the mic, I just want to remind everyone that I know many of you probably were involved in the No Kings protests. There's another one coming up on January 20th. Okay, so keep your eyes peeled in your social media and other announcements for local No Kings events. And now?
Hi, Jeff. Hi, Jim. I'm struck by, wow, that's strong. I'm struck by the whole thing. Thank you, Sallie and Nat and Carol and everybody. Thank you for writing this. I'm curious about a couple of things. Jim, I'm curious about what other pieces that you've written that you see as being in conversation with this piece, even though it is a piece taken from directly the Congressional Record. But also I'm struck by the conversation about Aristotle, and I'm reminded of the ancient Greek word for truth, or one of them, which was aletheia, which is that which cannot be forgotten. And I'm struck by that at the same time as what you are talking about, of holding on to not only our experiences, but also the sacredness of that record, and that record being enacted in human voices in spaces where people are hearing it and talking about it, because that is the process by which it will not be forgotten.
What a wonderfully pointed and relevant statement. Thank you very much for it. If I can offer a worthy response, it would only be to say that I think of the old legend, forgetfulness is the way to exile. Remembrance is the way to redemption. For us to continually remember what we've been through. Most of us, I gather from, and please don't be offended, but I gather from the look of us that we may be, many of us, from a sort of relatively defined cohort. We have a lot to remember. We have a lot to remember, and I'll take a clue from you just to lift up the one thing that I regard as the most important thing for me to remember, especially at a desperately discouraging moment like this in our national and personal history. the most important experience of my lifetime, still looming larger than what we're going through now, is what happened when we were young in 1989 and 1990 and 1991. My dad was a figure in the Cold War, and he conveyed to me the conventional wisdom of his generation, the post-World War II generation that established the resistance to the Soviet Union in the Cold War. And his and their absolute conviction was that the Cold War with the Soviet Union could only end in an apocalyptic, horrible nuclear catastrophe. And we had to be ready for it. We had to be preparing for it always. We had to continue to define our economy, our academic culture, our culture itself around resisting and preparing for that nuclear apocalypse. And they were wrong. They were wrong. The most important thing of us baby boomers and people a little older like myself and a little younger, the most important thing we lived through was the nonviolent resolution of the conflict between the Soviet Union and the United States of America. Beginning in 1989, the destruction of the Berlin Wall, nonviolently, the Soviet Union not calling out the troops to defend the 15 Soviet republics that wanted freedom, the Soviet Union dismantling itself nonviolently against the expectation of every Kremlinologist in America, in the West, the triumph of nonviolence, for which over a generation, people like Jeff and me and our fathers insisted on opposite sides, was the great question of human history. After 1945, of course it was. My friends, if the human species can find a way out of the locked box of the nuclear contest of the Cold War, it can find a way out of the almost locked box of this present catastrophe that we're living with. It's the most important source of hope that I'm aware of. And let's just remember how it happened, very briefly. It didn't happen because the people in charge became wise. It happened because the people at the bottom, represented on the other side of the Iron Curtain by Lech Walesa and a labor movement, and on this side of the Iron Curtain by a woman named Randy Forsberg, a graduate student at MIT, who in the late 1970s into the early 80s generated what was called the Nuclear Freeze movement, a grassroots movement that eventually changed the mind not only of all the people in power, but even of Ronald Reagan, so that the United States of America could say yes to Mikhail Gorbachev's invitation to dismantle the nuclear doom machine nonviolently. It happened. And if it happened, it can happen. That's the lesson. Forgive me, friend, for jumping off from your invitation to think of what's to remember, but remembering the most important thing of our lifetimes, that the world historic doom-laden conflict between the Soviet Union and the United States ended nonviolently because of a grassroots movement of resistance. That is a source of power and a source of renewed resistance for us now.
And when I compare the threat that was in existence then with the sort of the heavy weight of the powers that be, that were on both sides, our military industrial complex and their military industrial complex, And those were very serious people at the apex of those entities. And these guys are clowns. I mean, come on, you know? So I think it's much more likely that they are going to collapse and fail. I think we can be very hopeful about that because, I mean, are you kidding me? It's a joke.
So Jeff Zinn is even more hopeful than
I'm
I am.
even more hopeful.
So
Yes,
I
please.
apologize for being somewhat antithetical to your hopefulness.
No.
I remind us that we are on the sacred land of the Wampanoag people who were subject to a genocide, that we live in a country founded on the blood of millions of African human beings who were subject to the most heinous torture imaginable, that we have lived through a Holocaust of Jews in Europe, of Vietnamese in Vietnam, and that to sit here in hope, though the arc of history is long and I don't know where we're going to end up, is to be in a way in denial. The concentration camps are being built. The immigrants are being segregated. The fascists are being promulgated, and the progressives are being identified. And so in that spirit, I ask not that we go to a demonstration against the kings, but what meaningful resistance should we be preparing for, and what meaningful lessons ought we impart to our descendants to come? I'll just say one other thing. During the height of the anti-Vietnam, anti-war movement, when Black Panthers were being assassinated and the movement was growing, it only took the death of 4 students at Kent State to turn every white person in America into realizing that it was their ass that was on the line. And so, again, with apologies for being less than hopeful in the short run, I would appreciate it if you could address the issue of how do we resist. And as a personal note, I would say to you, Jim, Kirk Scharfenberg, presente.
It's a powerful statement and a very good note to introduce into this conversation. All that you say needs to be affirmed. I wouldn't presume to argue with any of it. I would just say, however, that hope is not looking at our present circumstance and concluding there's a way out of it. Hope is a choice that one makes despite the present circumstance. And you gave us a wonderful summary of what present circumstances have brought us here. All of the crimes, all of the impulses, all of the ways in which capital has trammeled on the rights of human beings of all classes. Thank you for that. But let me just come back at you and say, the bleakest assessment of our situation still ends by putting in front of us a choice. What are we going to do about it? And are we simply going to lie down and be defeated by the dark side of history? Or are we, as I just did with the memory of Lech Walesa and Randy Forsberg, going to insist on lifting up those moments in the past that we all share that have pointed a way forward so that we can actually look directly at what challenges us right now, which is horrors beyond horrors. I don't obviously have to enumerate them, and say we refuse to let the horrors define the future. The future is going to be defined, as it always is, by human choices, yours, mine, and everybody's. And that's the point. And that's the point of little, in Jeff's word, rituals like this. We come together. The coming together is the first act of resistance, solidarity. Here we are, folks. You all made a choice about how to spend your evening. You all made a choice. Come out in the cold. Here you are. What is this? It's an act of solidarity. It's already an act of resistance. And what we've done here is look again at something we would just as soon not look at. And it's even, I don't know about you, but it's even worse than I remembered. It's even worse than I remembered. And that demonic character is still in charge, and because he learned a lesson on January 6th, 5 years ago, that there are no consequences, no matter what shit you do, there are no consequences. Because he learned that lesson 5 years ago, we are at the mercy now, and the world is at the mercy now of his power. And in the face of that, we can be defeated ahead of time and discouraged and depressed and quit, or we can all leave here tonight grateful for our solidarity, grateful for the nerve it took of these performers to put in front of us the truth of what we're trying to reckon with, and grateful for the presence that everyone walked in here not knowing that each one's presence was going to be a gift to everybody else. So we remember, we resist together.
That might be a good note to leave on. Thank you again, everyone. Thank you so much for coming tonight.
That was a wonderful show. Fucking wonderful.
Oh, good.
By far the best. Wonderful. I don't think people were breathing. It wasn't that they weren't coughing. I don't think they were breathing. The audience. I'm talking about the audience.
It was very